For more than 150 years, the old Don Jail stood at the edge of Toronto like a fortress of stone and iron. Thousands of inmates passed through its gates. Many walked out, some never did. Tonight, we go inside the real history of killings behind the walls of the Don Jail. The murders committed by prisoners, the violence between inmates and guards, and the legal executions that ended with a rope and a trapdoor. This is Crime Scene Toronto. The Don Jail opened in 1864, built in the Victorian belief that architecture could control human behavior. Its design was meant to inspire order. Instead, it amplified fear. Cells were small, overcrowded, and dark. Disease was common, tensions ran high. From its earliest days, the jail earned a reputation for brutality, not just from guards, but from inmates desperate, sick, or violent. Historical records show a steady undercurrent of assault, intimidation, and deadly disputes long before anyone kept modern statistics. Toronto newspapers in the late 1800s referred to the Don as a place where tempers met the boiling point. According to staff notes of the era, the jail averaged dozens of violent incidents a year, including some that turned fatal. Inside the Don, grievances were settled in the shadows. Weapons were improvised, sharpened cutlery, metal scraped from pipes, broken broom handles. One of the earliest recorded killings occurred in the 1880s when an inmate serving time for robbery beat another inmate to death during a dispute over food rations. By the 1920s, a notorious case involved two rival bootleggers imprisoned on opposite sides of the range. The confrontation that followed ended with one man fatally stabbed in the throat with a smuggled piece of metal. Guards were not immune. Archival reports from the 1940s detail at least two fatal attacks on jail staff. One bludgeoned with a heavy tool stolen from a workroom, another stabbed during a chaotic escape attempt. Because oversight was minimal and investigations were often internal, many incidents went unreported to the public. Surviving documents suggest that over the Don Jail's history, more than 30 inmates died violently inside its walls, from beatings, stabbings, or gang retribution. Beyond the killings committed by inmates, the Don Jail also carried out Canada's most notorious legal executions. Between 1908 and 1962, 34 men were hanged inside the Don. These were not public events. They took place in a purpose-built execution shed, small, stark, and designed for one outcome. Among the most notorious was the 1908 hanging of Arthur Lucas and Robert Turpin, the last two men executed in Canada on December 11, 1962. Both were led down the corridor in shackles, placed over the trapdoor, and dropped within seconds of each other. The Don's executioners were government-contracted specialists, often working across Canada. They kept their identities discreet, but their work left permanent marks on Toronto's history. For decades, the Don Jail operated with a quiet efficiency: trial, conviction, and the ultimate sentence. Families waited outside the gates. Reporters gathered in the dark. When the trapdoor fell, it became final. These hangings were the official killings sanctioned by law, carried out in the name of justice as they cast a long shadow over the building's reputation. By the 1970s and 80s, the Don Jail was overcrowded, understaffed, and worn down. Violence escalated. Inmates described it as a pressure cooker. Fights broke out daily. Assaults were routine. In 1991, the death of a young inmate was beaten by others forced renewed scrutiny. A series of inquests revealed systemic issues: poor supervision, deteriorating conditions, and a culture that normalized aggression. Records from this period confirm violent deaths, some homicides, some medical emergencies where staff were slow to intervene. The province knew the building was beyond saving. By 2013, the old Don Jail finally closed. Today, parts of the structure have been preserved, but the ghosts of its history remain. Walk through the old East Wing and the air feels heavy, layers of stories pressed into brick and concrete. Every cell once had a life. Every corridor once echoed with conflict, desperation, and sometimes deadly intent. The Don Jail was more than a correctional institution. It was a stage where the city's darkest moments played out. Murders in the shadows, state sanctions hanging at dawn, and a century and a half of violence that shaped Toronto's criminal history. This has been Crime Scene Toronto, and thank you very much for watching.